What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Macro. I'm going to be filling in for Playtest IRL right now. He's a bit busy, but I was able to take some really janky, crazy stuff to a 24-person local and get first place with it. It involves this dude. And if you don't know what this dude does, you're about to find out. Shout out Zuxid. Zuxid is my homie. I've been featured in a couple of his videos. Obviously, he's the inspiration behind Winged Rhinos, but this is, I think, the best version of it. So sorry, Zuxid. None of that gadget stuff. Get the gadgets out of here. Get the Kaises in there. Let's start playing some shenanigans, dude. But before we do that, don't forget to subscribe. So my matchups for this locals were 3 different frogs and then Vayu Turbo. And I actually thought frogs were my worst matchup before, but now I think they might be neutral if not positive. So it was first a Dark Calling frog deck, and then it was a Hero frog deck, and then it was Fish OTK deck. Then it was Vayu Turbo. So we went 4-0. We won this entire pile of cards. It was like 20 packs worth. And guess what? Nothing in here was valuable. So shout out packs for being what they are. So without further ado, let's begin with the Winged Rhinos deck.
I'll be doing this as best as I can. I don't normally have a traditional setup because I'm not a Yu-Gi-Tuber yet. Let me know if you want me to start just making Yu-Gi-Oh content. Anyway, so this is Winged Rhinos. I think the best way to describe this deck is that it's very much like Chain Beat, but obviously we don't have Wind Up Rabbit and that one Evil Swarm guy, Thunderbird. But instead, all we got is this bad boy, Winged Rhinos. So we play 3 Winged Rhinos. Heart and Soul of the deck. Anytime a trap is activated, it could be your trap, it could be their trap, you can chain's effect to bounce it back to the hand. The main reason why that's really good is that there's a lot of traps in this format that are like 1-for-1s, Bottomless, Deep Prison, even Mere Force and Torrential come to mind, and this just completely avoids it. So as long as you don't get Solemned or War Charioted, this will survive. Then I run triple Caius. In this particular build, 3 Caius is really good. I run a very specific card that makes him work and also adds to the Chain Beat elements, because your goal is just to resolve accumulated fortunes, get value that way, kind of just force them to waste a lot of resources into cards that are all chainable. And then Caius is your real boss monster of this deck and the only way to really out things. I have a lot of ways to get Caius out and he just works really well in this deck. So then I run 1 Battle Fader, 1 Tragodia, and 1 Gores. It may seem weird because I do run over 20 traps, and you think, how would I even get Gores off? But all the traps are chainable, so Gores is easily going to make it. And then Battle Fader is just to keep yourself safe and also be tribute fodder for Caius. But some people play more than 1 Battle Fader. I just think you only need 1. I prefer proactive cards that I can chain and then resolve my chain links whenever I want to. And I feel like Battle Fader is a little bit too reliant on your opponent attacking. And these 2 are just a little bit better anyway for that. So these are the 3 defensive hand traps that we run. Then I run 1 tech to Breaker the Magic Warrior. Breaker the Magic Warrior, I consider it to be essentially just a worse Winged Rhinos in the sense that he causes chain links to happen. Worst case scenario, he's chain link 1, then they chain link 2 Bottomless him, and then you can chain link 3 Jar into Accumulated Fortune. So that's like the entire strategy behind it. Best case scenario, he's a +1. So summoning him was always really good this entire tournament. Basically won me a game versus the final match in Vayu Turbo. Just seeing him was nuts. It popped like a Mere Force. I main deck 2 DD Crows. And the reason why I main deck 2 DD Crows is because it's another chain link. You can chain it whenever. So sometimes you'll just chain it to nothing just to get like the 3rd chain link that you need for accumulated fortune to work. But in the best case scenario, it's insane in this meta. It's so good against Vayu. It's so good against frogs, especially hero frogs when they only have like 1 hero in the grave. Or if you successfully get both crows, you can crow both Treeborns game 1 and they usually just lose. Crow was insane, phenomenal in this deck. And because we draw so much, I was able to see it all the time. So yeah, Crow, MVP, I run 2 of them. And that's all the monsters. So I really only have 7 actual normal summonable monsters, 3 of which are Caius, and the rest are just Gores, Trag, Battle Faders. So it's not a really high monster count, but you do have ways to make it work. So we got triple Fires of Doomsday. This is one of the reasons why I play this version of the deck. Fires of Doomsday I found to be the perfect thing to make Winged Rhinos work with Caius. Some people were running Gravekeeper's Spy or running just other kind of mediocre cards. I don't think the gadgets are particularly that strong because they don't run over anything. But Fires of Doomsday was really cool because it was acting as multiple things. It could be an extra chain link that I can use whenever I needed to. I can use it on their end phase knowing that I'm going to Caius them the following turn, so I don't have to wait for them to attack me. So that's why I like it more than Battle Fader. It's good against Trap Stun. It's good against people trying to side in Royal Decree or main Royal Decree because I'm able to actually out a lot of those problem cards. And in the worst case scenario, it just blanks a couple attacks. If you're trying Winged Rhinos out, you got to try that. 1 Heavy Storm. one MST, and one Brain. We run Kaya, so Brain makes sense. Brain just also wins games. It won me my final match. Shout out Alberto. The MST is so good in this deck. Another Chainable is insane. Heavy Storm, they don't expect it because you're setting 5, so they'll set 5 sometimes, and then I'll chain all my back row, and then boom, they get blown out. So yeah, Heavy is nuts. This whole, you never really want to cut these at all. MST is also even good against decks that aren't even running traps because you can MST your own Good Goblin Housekeeping, which I'll explain later why that matters. But yeah, so all these cards are just amazing. That's it, 6 spells. The rest are just traps, dude. There's just so many traps. So we got the 3 Legacy. We got the 3 Jar. Everyone knows about these cards now. They went up in price like crazy. I'm so glad I already had super versions of these. The secrets, if someone wants to send secrets to me, please, I would love them. The Legacy and Jar of Greeds, they are what keep your Rhinos alive. Your Rhinos can dodge so many things. It can dodge Caiuses. It can dodge people using their Raikou not in damage step. It can just dodge Smashing Grounds, Book of Moons. It dodges all of these things because you have these chainable cards. You chain this and then you chain Rhinos' effect to it. Boom, it's safe. And you draw a card. And sometimes you'll draw into Fader, Tragodia, or Gores. These are super important because they also act as chain links. You need to get up to chain link 3 with different cards, and these are what help you get Accumulated Fortune off, which is like the real star of this entire deck. Before we get there though, I run triple Good Goblin Housekeeping. So Good Goblin Housekeeping, I run it over Reckless Greed. A lot of Chain Beat players swear by Reckless Greed, but I feel like this deck is too inconsistent to run Reckless Greed. Reckless Greed is only ever good if you see multiple of it. Otherwise, it is always a minus. Versus Good Goblin Housekeeping, the first one is a minus, the second one is a neutral, and the third one is a plus. And trust me, you get this third one off a lot. And the first one, it usually can be neutraled out by the Accumulated Fortune giving you the plus. So you end up neutraling anyway. And if they MST it or Raikou it or something, you're neutraling. So you're good. So this card is objectively better than Reckless Greed in this particular deck. I'm not saying Reckless Greed can't be used. You can find space for it if you'd like. I just always found that Reckless Greed would lose me more games than it won me. 3 Good Goblin Housekeeping. Oh, also why I'm able to run a little bit more crazy tech cards is because I can draw into like a DD Crow against the matchup where DD Crow's not that good and then just bottom deck. If you don't know what Good Goblin Housekeeping does, you draw a card for every Good Goblin Housekeeping in the grave. So you draw 1 and then you bottom deck a card. So then if there's already 1 in grave, you'll draw 2, bottom deck a card. If there's 2 in the grave, you'll draw 3. And that's why like when I mentioned the MST combo, you could activate Good Goblin Housekeeping, chain MST, targeting your own Good Goblin Housekeeping. It resolves backwards and it'll read as a Good Goblin Housekeeping being in the grave. So even if they like heavy storm you and you have like an MST and Good Goblin can like do work together. So it's pretty nuts. I love this card. Underrated. I wish it had a holo. And then the actual best card in the entire deck is Accumulated Fortune. If you can resolve 1 Accumulated Fortune, you're going to be fine. But a lot of times you can resolve 2 or all 3 of them. Another important ruling that all chain burn people know, but you should just know just so you don't like call a judge and waste time, is that you can actually chain Accumulated Fortune to another Accumulated Fortune because Accumulated Fortune is only looking at the previous chain links. So you can do chain link 1, Good Goblin Housekeeping, chain link 2, Legacy, chain link 3, Jar. So that's chain link 1, 2, 3. 3 unique cards. Then you can Accumulated Fortune. And then you can do another Accumulated Fortune. You can't do a third because by the time a third one came in, these 5 cards are not all different because there's 2 accumulated. But before that, this Accumulated Fortune would only see 4 unique cards. So you can actually get so much value out of that. So rarely have I ever drawn all 3 accumulated, but drawing 2 feels really good a lot of the time. And like I said, you have so many chainable cards and you also can rely on your opponent doing stuff to start a chain. So you only really need 3 chain links and you're fine. So yeah, I really, really like Accumulated Fortune. I mean, it's the reason why you play this deck. If you don't play Accumulated, you're not playing Chain Beat. Now, the rest of the traps are actual defense. As you can tell, there was a lot of traps that don't do anything. They just kind of dodge a lot of Lila's, Raikou's, MST, Heavy Storms. But the rest are actual genuine defense. So we got Bottomless Trap Hole, Triple D Prison, Double Compulse, Mirror Force, and Torrential, and I'll get to the last card in a second. These are all, I mean, everything here is pretty standard. Compulse is a little bit different. I like Compulse, even though there's some matchups where it's not that good. I end up compulsing my own Caius or my own Breaker or my own Gores a lot because they'll blind into hitting this card. I'll compulse back a Caius or the Gores, and now they have to play around it the rest of the duel. So Compulse is insanely good in this particular deck, especially because you can really keep recycling your Caiuses. You can dodge Bottomlesses, it can dodge a lot of things. And then against other decks where they Synchro or Fusion, this is just, you know, an insane out. Everything else is pretty standard. They're just the best traps in the format. These 2 are obviously insane. Torrential is even better in this deck than any other deck in my opinion because you can torrential and then still save your monster versus other decks they can't do that. So yeah, this is the main defensive trap lineup. I used to run Allure of Darkness, but I found that every time I was like resolving it, it felt like I was losing out on an important piece. I didn't like Allure anymore, so I completely cut it. And in favor, I'm running one Needle Ceiling in the main deck, and this was so busted. I didn't even realize, like, besides the fact that obviously it synergizes with Winged Rhinos, because if your opponent has a bunch of monsters and you have the Winged Rhinos, like, if they have 3 monsters, this is live. But the other part of this deck that has been so clutch is that you always end up having at least like 1 token out. But if you have both of these cards, Needle Ceiling ends up being alive so much more. So Fires of Doomsday gets even more value in this deck with Needle Ceiling main decked. I almost want to main deck another one. It's just so strong. Literally won me so many of the frog matchups. Like the dupe block is non-existent when this is here. And you can make them miss timing because you can chain Jar first, then chain Needle Ceiling. It's so busted. I love Needle Ceiling. And in testing, it's been super good. So I also wish this came in any rarity. Why is it always just common stuff, dude? It's so weird. So that is the main deck. Extra deck, this is really quick. It's not that important, but it actually did come up, which is so funny. Like, it actually came up. This is the tokens I end up using a lot. This is the Gorge token. Yeah, just some token shenanigans. Triple Chimera Tech, you don't necessarily need your extra decks, so I'd rather max out on Machine Hate if I can. Also, Cyber Dragon's just really good right now. And machines are getting better, so. If they leave a tuner on the field, the most common one they'll leave is a level 3, so you'll make 7s the most. So, Black Rose, Armor Master, which won me the final game because they left a Gale on the field. So, that was kind of nice to see that. Yeah, X-Saber or Bellum. And then the only monster that I wish I had space for was an Arcanite Magician because I do run Breaker. I've never really found that I've needed Arcanite most of the time. Yeah, if you want to just cut like a Chimera Tech for an Arcanite, you can do that. 8s, Colossal, Stardust, Dark End because you run Caius if they leave a Plague or something. The Staples 6s. You know, Goyo Brio or Cheese Quest, whatever, because you can win games with them. Just a Cataster, an Armory Arm, and a Mistworm. So they don't come up like that often, but you do run Brain Control. People can creature swap. People are weird. In the side, I side a second Breaker. I usually side a second Breaker in matchups, ironically, that don't run traps. If they don't run traps, I find that Winged Rhinos is kind of useless. Winged Rhinos doesn't really get as much of its value. But if they don't run traps, that means they're also probably going to run Royal Decree. So having Breaker, a second Breaker to just pop a Decree is very important. So yeah, that's why I run an extra Breaker in the side. I also side 2 Cyber Dragons, a lot of Chimera Techs. Cyber Dragon is just good against Black Wings. It's good against Glad Beast. It's good against anything where you just need a pretty strong beater. Most of the time, people won't keep Oppression in on you because it's not the strongest card against you. Yeah, it hits like your little token guys, but that's it. It doesn't really hurt Gores or Trag. It doesn't hurt Rhinos, and it's not going to help you against like a lot of back rows. So yeah, Cyber Dragon's pretty nuts. For the Blackwing matchup, I side 2 Snowman Eater. It's also good for Hero Beat. This one, I'll usually cut like a Fires of Doomsday for 1 or 2 of these. And yeah, it's just a really strong card into those matchups. And then you contribute it later for Caius. And it's just hard for them to deal with. So, and then the actual MVP of my side deck is definitely Vanity's Fiend. Vanity's Fiend fulfills the requirement of Fires of Doomsday. If you don't know Fires of Doomsday, you can't tribute the tokens for anything except a dark monster. So yeah, this fulfills that requirement, and this won me all the frog matchups. Every time I saw it almost every time I was playing against the frogs, and it was nuts. It was busted. So yeah. Double Vanity's Fiend. The only spell and trap hate besides Breaker you run is Twister and a Dust Tornado. They have different purposes. Twister is better against Blackwings. Dust Tornado is better against everything else that isn't Blackwings. I side both in, but like Twister is specifically for Blackwings, and if I really think Royal Decree is coming in. Twister is also just super good in this deck because just like MST, you can do that combo with Good Goblin Housekeeping. And then Dust Tornado is Dust Tornado. Like just a 1-of though. I don't feel like you need as much back row hate like other decks. I run 1 Threatening Roar in the side for Dragon Turbo, X-Sabers, just BS that just is going to like try to Cold Wave or Giant Trinade you. This usually can keep you protected if you see it. I think a 1-0 is fine though, because it's kind of a minus otherwise. And then I run 1 Fossil Dyna. Better, he's like a little bit worse than Vanity's Fiend in this deck, but sometimes you just need more normal summons. And sometimes against like frogs, I side like a Winged Rhinos out, so I put this one in. So yeah, I mean, he's also just good against like Amaryllis and other things too.
So I kind of didn't understand that Chain Disappearance doesn't banish from the grave, so it's actually pretty bad. So I'm going to be cutting it for Mind Crush. I think Mind Crush is a little bit better for the Blackwing matchup, and I think that's my weakest matchup. But yeah, so don't run this, run Mind Crush instead.
Going second against Raikou Hamster, Spies, whatever. Nobleman cross out. Pretty good. Transmigration Prophecy, I do think it's really good, especially in this deck, because you can recycle some of your own stuff. And against like particular matchups like this just destroys. I think it's a little bit better in this deck though, because it is a trap that you can chain like whenever. Chainable traps are just insane. So yeah, Transmigration. And then the final tech, and this is the card that I think is so funny. I don't even think it's necessarily the greatest card, but when you resolve it, it feels like the greatest card in the world. And that is Big Burn. So Big Burn, if you don't know what it does, you can only activate this card when your opponent activates a card that specifically designates a monster in the graveyard. Remove all monsters in both graveyards from play. So you can use this in response to Pot of Avarice. You can use this in response to Salvage. You can use this in response to Monster Reincarnation. You can use this in response to Lumina. But the most crazy thing you can use this in response to is Red Eyes Wyvern and Vayu. Vayu specifically targets the Sirocco in the graveyard. So in the final round of the final match, the Vayu Turbo player targeted the Sirocco. He had a Vayu, a Sirocco, and a Plague Spreader. 4 cards in that grave that were all live. And we don't care about the monsters in our grave. He activates Vayu's effect to target the Sirocco. I chain Big Burn. I just gained so much value. It was soul release on crack. I think it's a more reactive soul release because they feel like they're safe going into like some of this stuff. It's chainable. We like chainable stuff because then we can do Chainlink 1, Vayu, Chainlink 2 this, Chainlink 3 like Jar into Accumulate. Like you can do all these shenanigans. That's why I like it a little bit more than soul release. And I think it's just people just don't expect it. Like they just get so, it burns people, man. It's a salty card. So stock up on Big Burns. It's like 20 cents for the super. I think there's some unexplored territory here for decks that can run it.
So that is my Winged Rhinos Chain Beat deck. I think it's super duper fun to play. I'm pretty confident you can make this deck all common and have a super fun time with it. I want people to explore it. I really do think that this deck has a ton of potential in this format. I think there is still something missing, some sauce in there. So people can try Dark Armed. You can try other things as well. There's something there. Anyway, thank you so much to Playtest IRL for letting me just do this deck profile. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it wasn't too janky, but you know, I'm not perfect. But Edison is.